I paid rent every month, helped around the house, but somehow ended up sleeping in the basement. So, I'm Jared, 24, and I live in Pittsburgh. I've been freelancing for about 3 years now, mostly audio editing, podcast post-production, and lately some YouTube voiceovers. It's not a gold mine, but I get by. I live with my mom in this small but decent two-story house in Brighton Heights. She's cool for the most part, and we've got our rhythm down. I pay her $600 a month, which covers my room, my share of the utilities, and whatever she needs for Netflix and her phone plan. She keeps saying it's not necessary, but I'd rather contribute than feel like a leech. Plus, $600 in this economy for a private room and a home-cooked dinner most nights? I'm not complaining. The room itself is more than just a bedroom. It's also my studio. I saved up for months and put together a pretty decent setup. Rode in T1, a mic, Scarlett 2i2 interface, a Canon M50 camera mounted on an adjustable arm, a ring light, plus some acoustic foam panels that make the walls look like a spaceship. Altogether, I think it ran me about $4 grand, give or take. Not top-tier stuff, but solid enough for what I do. I treat it like a little temple. Shoes off. Don't touch the mic arm. No food near the keyboard. Most days, I wake up around 10, have coffee downstairs while my mom watches those daytime court shows. Then I lock myself in my room to work. She doesn't bother me unless it's something important, and I try not to work past 8 p.m. so she can watch her crime dramas in peace without me yelling "cut" into the mic. I handle the groceries once a week and cook sometimes when I get tired of her casseroles. She's not a bad cook, but there's only so many variations of tuna noodle surprise one person can handle. Thing is, life is quiet. It's predictable. Sometimes that bugs me, especially when I scroll Instagram and see people from high school getting married, moving into condos with city views, posting photos from Berlin and Buenos Aires. But then I remember most of those people are drowning in debt or working 60-hour weeks. I have space. I have time. I have control. That's something. I don't date much. It's not that I'm a hermit. I just don't meet many people, and I'm not about to blow through cash on random Hinge dates when I've still got software subscriptions and gear upgrades on my wish list. Besides, being a freelancer has its own rhythm. You're either hustling or you're anxious about not hustling. And even when you're doing okay, the idea of bringing someone into your life when your whole world is a converted bedroom studio above your mom's kitchen, I don't know. It just feels like too much to explain. My mom's name is Carol. She's 56 and works part-time at a thrift store down in Westview. She used to do payroll for a car dealership, but they let her go after it got bought out by some national chain. Since then, she's been kind of coasting, doing crossword puzzles and feeding the neighbors' cats when they're on vacation. We get along, mostly because we leave each other alone. I think she likes having me here. I fix her Wi-Fi when it goes out and drive her to appointments when her arthritis flares up. She always says she doesn't want to be a burden, but truth is, she's not. We just coexist in a way that makes sense. There's something kind of peaceful about that, even if it sounds boring. My life's not flashy, and it sure as hell isn't the kind of thing you'd brag about at a reunion, but it works. It's calm. There's stability in it. I have a place where I can focus on building something, even if that something is just a solid client list and a backup hard drive full of audio files. And honestly, that's more than a lot of people have. I woke up that morning the same way I usually did, late, groggy, and not entirely sure what day it was. The coffee had just finished brewing when I heard unfamiliar voices coming from the living room. At first, I thought maybe my mom was watching one of those talk shows where everyone yells over each other, but as I rounded the corner into the hallway, it was clear this wasn't TV. There were kids. Real, live kids. Talking. Laughing. One of them was eating dry cereal straight out of the box, perched on the edge of the couch like he owned the place. I just stood there for a second, blinking like maybe I was still dreaming. My mom noticed me before I could say anything and gave me that look she always uses when she's about to deliver news she knows I'm not going to like. She came over, lowered her voice, and said, "Jared, this is temporary. Rhonda and the boys needed a place to stay. It's just until things settle down." And just like that, I was informed that our house was now home to 3 more people. I didn't say anything right away, just nodded and walked back to the kitchen like I hadn't just been told that my quiet, structured life was now going to be shared with a woman I barely knew and her 2 loud, sugar-fueled kids. I sat at the table, sipping my coffee in silence, trying to process what this meant. Rhonda had always been a background character in my mom's life, someone who popped up in stories from time to time, usually followed by my mom clucking her tongue and saying, "Poor Rhonda." I knew she had a rough marriage, but I hadn't realized it had gotten bad enough to drive her out of her own house. Later that day, after the kids were corralled into the guest room with some iPads and Rhonda was helping my mom fold laundry, I finally asked what exactly temporary meant. My mom gave me this soft sigh, the kind that's supposed to make you feel guilty for even asking, and said, "She just needs a little time, Jared." Her husband was, well, he heard her. She grabbed the boys and ran in the middle of the night. They didn't have anywhere else to go. And what was I supposed to say to that? No? Kick them out? Tell a woman who just fled her abusive husband that she's not welcome? Of course not. I just nodded again and said I understood, because I did. I might not have liked it, but I wasn't a monster. The first couple days weren't terrible. They stayed in the guest room, mostly. Rhonda kept to herself when she wasn't helping my mom, and the kids, while loud, at least had the decency to crash hard by 9 p.m. I started wearing noise-canceling headphones all the time, even when I wasn't working, just to get some kind of bubble around me. My room, my studio, became more than just a workspace. It was a bunker. I locked the door every time I left, which I'd never had to do before, and I started keeping my gear covered when I wasn't using it, just in case. There was this moment on the third day that kind of summed everything up for me. I came out to grab a soda, and one of the boys, Jason, the older one, I think he's 9, was standing in the hallway in his socks holding one of my XLR cables. I don't even know how he got it, but it was looped over his shoulder like some kind of explorer rope. I didn't yell, but I must have looked pissed because he dropped it the second he saw me and ran back to the guest room. Later, when I went to plug it back in, the connector was bent. I didn't even bring it up. What was the point? My mom would have just said it was an accident, that he didn't know any better, that I should be the bigger person. So I ordered a replacement and tried to swallow the irritation, but it just sat there like a stone in my gut. It wasn't just the gear. It was the shift. The sudden lack of control over a space that used to be mine. The constant noise, the shared bathroom, the stray socks and backpacks in the hallway, the faint sound of cartoons bleeding through the wall when I was trying to record. I knew I wasn't being fair, not really. Rhonda looked exhausted all the time. She tried her best to stay out of the way. The boys weren't bad kids, just kids. They didn't get why I needed silence to record, or why my computer wasn't for games, or why I didn't want them touching the sound panels on my walls. And maybe they never would. I kept telling myself this wasn't permanent, that eventually they'd move on. Rhonda would get on her feet, maybe find an apartment or go stay with family or something, and things would go back to normal. I clung to that idea like it was a life raft. But even in those early days, there was this uneasiness, like the house was holding its breath, like something had shifted and wasn't going to shift back. And I couldn't help but wonder if my mom was being honest when she said temporary, or if she just didn't want to admit that everything was about to change. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of those slow, gray Pittsburgh days where the sky looks like it's been washed with dirty dishwater. I'd just gotten back from Giant Eagle with a bag of groceries balanced on one arm and a six-pack tucked under the other. I remember I was in a decent mood. I'd finally nailed a tough client edit the night before. The house was quiet when I left, and all I wanted was to make some pasta, crack a beer, and maybe game for an hour before diving back into work. Nothing fancy, just a normal, quiet evening. But the second I stepped through the front door, I knew something was wrong. I didn't hear the usual muffled noise from the guest room or the TV droning in the background. No cartoons, no cooking sounds, just this weird silence and the faint click of something tapping against glass. When I turned the corner into the hallway and saw my bedroom door wide open, my stomach dropped. That door is never open when I'm not home. Never. I dropped the grocery bag on the kitchen table and walked fast, maybe too fast, toward my room, heart already thudding in my ears. And there they were, both of Rhonda's kids, in the middle of my room like it was some kind of rec center. The older one, Jason, was sitting at my desk, jabbing the trackpad on my MacBook with sticky fingers, windows flicking open and closed. The younger one, Evan, was standing on my chair, reaching up to grab one of my ring lights, which was teetering at a dangerous angle. The diffuser already halfway popped off. My mic arm was twisted to the side, the shock mount dangling, and my interface, my damn Scarlett interface, was shoved against the baseboard like trash. My camera had been unplugged. My headphones were on the floor. One of the foam panels had a crayon line running across it like some kind of preschool graffiti. I don't even remember what I said at first. It was loud. Not a scream, but loud. Something like, "What the hell are you doing?" Maybe louder than it needed to be, but I honestly didn't care at that point. Both of them froze. Jason jumped off the chair like he'd touched a live wire, and Evan just started crying immediately. No explanation. No apology. Just wide eyes and guilt smeared all over their faces. That's when Rhonda came barreling in from the hallway, already yelling like I'd just hit one of them. "Don't you raise your voice at my children," she snapped, marching into the room like she had any business being there. I looked at her, then at my stuff, then back at her, trying to wrap my head around the fact that she was mad at me. "Your kids are in my room," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "They're messing with my equipment. This is my workspace, Rhonda. They have no business in here." She scoffed, actually scoffed, like I'd just said something ridiculous. Relax, she said, tossing her hand in the air like she was swatting away a fly. They're just kids. They were curious. No harm done. No harm done. That's what she said while one of my light stands was wobbling from being kicked out of position, and my open MacBook was sitting in front of a child who couldn't tell a USB port from a juice box. I took a step forward and looked her dead in the eye. This isn't a toy room, I said, my jaw clenched so tight I could feel it pulsing. That computer cost me $2,000. The mic, another $300. You have any idea what happens if something gets broken? You gonna replace it? She gave me this look, like I was the unreasonable one. It's not that serious, Jared. They didn't mean any harm. You don't need to freak out. They were in my drawers, I snapped, pointing to the half-open cabinet where Evan had clearly been rifling through my cables. They unplugged my setup. They touched everything. You didn't even ask. No one asked. Jason was hiding behind her by that point, and Evan had retreated into the hallway, sniffling like he was the victim. I could feel myself boiling. Not because I hated kids. Not even because something was broken, yet. It was the principle. The sheer audacity of it. This was my space. My sanctuary. The one thing in the house I controlled. And it had been invaded without warning, without permission, like it meant nothing. Rhonda folded her arms and said, well, maybe if you weren't so uptight about your gear, they wouldn't feel like they have to sneak in. I think I actually laughed. One of those short, bitter barks that just kind of explodes out when you're too angry to form words. I picked up my headphones off the floor and saw that one of the ear pads had a gouge in it, like it had been bitten or torn. That was it for me. I didn't say anything else. Just started unplugging everything. My mic, my interface, the lights. I coiled the cables carefully, one by one, even though my hands were shaking. Rhonda was still standing there, arms crossed, waiting for me to calm down like this was just another tantrum that would pass. But I didn't calm down. I didn't forget it. I boxed everything up, piece by piece, in silence, and stacked the gear against the far wall. I didn't even look at her when I was done. I just walked out, past the half-empty grocery bag on the kitchen table, past my mom who was pretending not to notice the commotion, and down into the basement to sit in the dark and try to make sense of what the hell just happened to my life. I waited until the kids were down for the night before I brought it up. I needed to be calm. I didn't want to come at this with the same energy I had earlier, yelling in my own doorway while my equipment got manhandled like it was just plastic junk from a toy store. I thought maybe if I approached it like an adult, my mom would meet me halfway. That was the plan anyway. She was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a catalog, glasses halfway down her nose like she wasn't already bracing for this conversation. I stood there for a second before saying anything, just staring at her and trying to decide whether it was even worth it. Then I took a deep breath and started. Mom, I said, we need to talk about what happened earlier. She looked up, didn't say anything, just waited. So I went on. You know I pay for that room. $600 a month. I cover the utilities. That room isn't just where I sleep. It's my workspace. My studio. That's how I make money. That's how I pay rent. It's not just a bedroom, and it's not a playroom for someone else's kids. She set the catalog down and folded her hands like she was preparing for a lecture. I understand you're upset, she said slowly, but this is still my house. And in my house, I decide what happens under this roof. I just stared at her. That line hit me harder than I expected. Not because it surprised me, but because of how final it felt. Like she'd drawn the line and dared me to cross it. I opened my mouth to respond. But before I could even get the words out, Rhonda walked in from the hallway holding a mug like she hadn't just spent the last week turning my life upside down. You're being selfish, she said without missing a beat. We're going through something hard right now. I didn't ask to be here, but we're here. And you freaking out over some wires and lights makes you look petty, not professional. That was the moment. The shift. The first crack in everything I'd been trying so hard to maintain. I looked from Rhonda to my mom, and neither of them looked sorry. Neither of them looked like they thought they'd done anything wrong. Petty, I said, my voice low because I was afraid if I let it out, I wouldn't be able to pull it back. You let your kids go through my stuff. You didn't ask. You didn't even tell me they were in there. You let them touch equipment that took me years to save up for, and now you want to stand here and tell me I'm being selfish. Rhonda rolled her eyes and said, they didn't break anything. You're just being dramatic. I turned back to my mom, who still hadn't said a word. Do you seriously think this is okay? I asked her. You always said I was contributing, that I was helping, but now it's just my house, my rules. That's it. She sighed and rubbed her forehead like she was tired of dealing with me. Jared, I'm trying to be understanding. Rhonda's in a tough spot. This is a temporary situation. I'm asking you to show some compassion. I have shown compassion, I said, the words sticking in my throat. I didn't say anything when they moved in. I didn't complain when I had to start working with headphones on in the basement. I didn't even flip out when your friend's kid broke my backup headphones. I've been trying. But this is my breaking point. Rhonda didn't like that. Oh, poor you, she muttered, taking a sip of whatever was in her mug. Must be so hard to have to share space while a woman and her kids recover from being abused. You ever think about anyone but yourself? That did it. I laughed, bitter and quiet. You think this is about space? It's about respect. And it's not just about the kids being in my room. It's about the fact that nobody said a word to me. Nobody asked. You just walked in and acted like my things didn't matter because you decided your situation was more important. She scoffed again and walked off, muttering under her breath about how ungrateful I was. My mom sat there, still not looking at me. I waited, gave her a chance to say something. Anything. But when she finally spoke, all she said was, "Jared, I just need you to be more flexible right now." I looked at her for a long time. My jaw was tight. My hands were shaking. I picked up my water from the counter and said, "Yeah, I bet you do." Then I turned around and walked back to the basement. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just sat at the bottom of the stairs and stared at the wall. Not thinking. Not even angry. Not in the way I expected. Just done. Because it finally clicked. This wasn't about a room or gear or noise. It was about the fact that the second I needed something, anything, they decided I didn't count. That my work didn't count. That my space wasn't mine after all. And no amount of rent would change that. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that crayon line across my phone panel or the MacBook screen flashing open windows under sticky fingers. I sat down there in the basement with my arms crossed, trying to hold it all together, trying not to let the helplessness sink in too deep. It wasn't even about the damn equipment anymore. It was about how fast I went from paying tenant to unwanted obstacle. How quickly my space turned into a shared zone with no warning, no discussion, like my needs didn't even register anymore. So the next morning, I decided to try one last time. Not a confrontation, not a fight, a compromise, something reasonable. I waited until after breakfast, when Rhonda took the kids out for a walk and the house was quiet again. My mom was in the kitchen rinsing dishes, humming under her breath like nothing had happened. I stood there for a second, steadying my breath, and then I just said it. "Look, I've been thinking," I told her. "I get that this isn't ideal for anyone, and I get that Rhonda needs help. So I've got a compromise. Let me move my studio gear into the guest room. I'll clear out as much as I can. They can take my bedroom, spread out, do whatever they need. I'll take the smaller room if that's what it takes." She didn't say anything right away, just kept rinsing a mug like she hadn't heard me. When she finally looked over at me, her face was already set. I knew that look. The answer was no before the words even came out. "There's not enough space in there," she said, shaking her head. "You can't move all your stuff into that room. It's cramped. There's no desk, no outlets, no room for your lights or whatever. And the boys can't sleep in a pile. That wouldn't be fair." I blinked, not because I didn't hear her, but because I couldn't believe how fast she shot it down. "I'm not asking for ideal," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm just asking for something. Right now I don't even have a room. I'm working out of a basement with one outlet and no door." She shrugged like that wasn't her problem. "You'll manage. You always figure things out." "And Rhonda?" I asked, not even bothering to hide the frustration anymore. "She doesn't have to manage? She just gets handed the best room in the house and I get, what? Pushed aside. She's been through enough," my mom said quietly. "I'm not about to make her kids sleep in a cramped room while you play with microphones." "Play with microphones?" I repeated, stunned. "Is that what you think I do?" "I didn't mean it like that," she said, already irritated with me like I was being overly sensitive again. "I just meant it's not the same. They need space to sleep. You're just working." I felt my jaw tighten and forced myself not to yell. "I pay you rent. Every month. I pay utilities. I paid for that setup with freelance jobs you never even ask about. This isn't some side gig. It's my job. And you're acting like I'm just some teenager throwing a tantrum over a gaming console." She turned to face me then, arms crossed, that stern look back in full force. "Jared, this isn't about you. Rhonda and her boys don't have anywhere else to go. This is about doing the right thing." "No," I said, my voice low. "This is about you deciding that her comfort matters more than mine. That what I do doesn't count. That I don't count. That's not fair," she snapped. "No," I said again. "What's not fair is watching someone else take over the room I paid for while you tell me to just make it work from the basement. What's not fair is being treated like my presence here is optional, while hers is protected like it's sacred." She didn't answer. She just picked up another plate and turned back to the sink like the conversation was over. And that was the moment. The shift from frustration to clarity. The moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding or a rough patch. This was a line drawn in the sand. My mom had picked a side, and it wasn't mine. I waited a few days before saying anything. Not because I needed time to cool off, but because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to be absolutely certain that this wasn't just a bad week or a temporary miscommunication. I watched the way things played out in those few days. The way my mom would set extra places at the table without thinking. The way Rhonda would glance at me like I was the intruder in my own home. The way the kids had already stopped knocking before barging into whatever room they wanted. My stuff was still boxed up in the corner of the basement like it had been evicted along with me, and no one made any move to fix it. So I waited until the next Sunday morning, when my mom was making pancakes and the house smelled like butter and syrup and something close to normal. I leaned against the kitchen doorway and told her flat out, "I can't keep doing this," I said. "This whole arrangement. It's not working for me. So here's where I'm at. Either I move back into my room and get my space back, or I'm moving out. That's it. Those are the options." She looked up from the stove, spatula in her hand, like I'd just told her the coffee machine was broken. For a second I thought she might actually take it seriously, like she might consider that I wasn't bluffing. Then she laughed. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was that tight, dismissive laugh she used when she thought I was being dramatic. "Oh, come on," she said, flipping a pancake onto a plate. "You can't afford to move out." She said it like it was obvious. Like I was a kid bluffing about running away with a backpack full of snacks and no destination. Like the idea of me having any independence was still a hypothetical. "I can," I said. "Maybe not somewhere great, but I'll find a room to rent. Something close enough to keep working. I've been saving." She didn't even look up from the skillet. "Sure you have." That hit harder than I expected. Not because she was wrong. I mean, she wasn't totally right either, but because she didn't even try to hide how little she believed in me. Like the idea of me being capable on my own was still some kind of fantasy. "You think I'm just going to sit in a basement forever while strangers live in my room?" I asked. "While you call it your house and treat me like a tenant you don't have to respect?" "I didn't say that," she replied, but it wasn't denial. It was deflection. "You did. Every time you tell me what I can't do. Every time you make a decision without asking me. Every time you choose Rhonda's comfort over mine. You've made it clear." She sighed, set the spatula down, and finally looked at me. "This is my house, Jared. I'm doing what I think is right. You've had it easy here. You've had support. You've had time. But now someone else needs help, and you're acting like it's a personal attack." I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "It's not about her needing help. It's about me not matching anymore. About how quick you were to give away what I was paying for like it was nothing. You think this is support? You shoved me into a basement and acted like I should be grateful." She didn't answer, just turned back to the stove like the conversation was already over. Like she didn't believe me. Like she didn't think I'd actually go through with it. So that afternoon, I opened my laptop, logged onto a local rentals group, and started scrolling. Prices were bad, but not impossible. Rooms in Bloomfield, Lawrenceville, even a basement sublet in Bellevue that looked sketchy but doable. I made a list, sent a few messages, didn't say anything to her. I figured she'd find out soon enough. And honestly, for the first time in a while, I felt something close to relief. Because even if it wasn't perfect, at least I was finally doing something. At least I wasn't waiting around anymore, hoping to be treated like I mattered in a place that had stopped feeling like home. It was a Thursday, mid-morning, and I had a quick job to finish. Just a couple hours of dialogue cleanup for a YouTube channel I'd been working with for a few months. Nothing major, but I needed my over-ear headphones for it. The pair I always kept hooked to my desk, the same ones I used for every edit. They weren't in the basement with the rest of my stuff because I hadn't wanted to risk them getting damaged in that dusty corner, so I'd left them on a shelf in what used to be my room. I figured I'd just walk in, grab them, and get out. 2 minutes, tops. The door was half open when I got there, and I could hear one of the kids inside humming along to a cartoon on my old Bluetooth speaker. I knocked once, out of habit more than anything else, then pushed the door open. Rhonda was inside, sitting on my bed, her bed now, I guess, folding a pile of tiny clothes. She didn't look up when I stepped in, just kept folding until I was fully inside the room. I scanned quickly for the headphones, spotted them on the desk under a hoodie, and moved to grab them. She stood up fast, blocking the desk with her body. "What are you doing?" she said, like I'd just barged in holding a crowbar. I blinked, caught off guard. "I just need to grab my headphones. I left them here." Her eyes narrowed, and her voice sharpened like a knife cutting through fabric. "This is the children's room now. You can't just come in here whenever you feel like it. You're violating their personal space." I stared at her, stunned for a second, trying to figure out if she was serious. "My personal space," I said, almost laughing, "was here until you threw your laundry on top of my desk and let your kid draw on my foam panels." She crossed her arms like she was ready to dig in. "That doesn't matter. The kids are settled in now. This room is theirs. You need to respect that." I felt something snap. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet and sharp, like a string breaking inside my chest. My hands were still at my sides, my mouth open like I wanted to argue, but I didn't have the energy for it anymore. I looked at the headphones, then at her, then back again. Then I turned around and walked out. I didn't say a word. I went straight to the basement, pulled up the browser on my laptop, and sent a message to the guy in Crafton who'd emailed me back about the apartment. It wasn't anything special, a one-bedroom above a mechanic shop, half-sized kitchen, old carpet, probably noisy during the day, but the price was decent, and it was available immediately. I told him I could meet him that afternoon to sign the lease. And I did. I signed it without hesitating, put down the deposit, got the keys, and told him I'd start moving in that weekend. It wasn't about the size or the neighborhood or how far I'd be from anything familiar. It was about breathing again. It was about being able to close a door that no one else had a key to. I sat in my car for a while after that, key in hand, just letting the silence sit around me. For the first time in weeks, no one was talking over me. No one was telling me I was being selfish. No one was calling my job a hobby or my gear just wires. It wasn't joy I felt. Not exactly. It was something colder than that, something like clarity. Like I'd finally stopped waiting for things to go back to how they were and accepted what they'd become. I waited until after midnight. The house had been quiet for a couple of hours, the lights off one by one until only the porch lamp remained. I kept the hallway light off as I moved, not because I was sneaking around like a thief, but because I didn't want to wake anyone. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want explanations or one last guilt trip or some forced goodbye that meant nothing. I just wanted out. The duffel bag was already half packed in the basement, stuffed with cables, backup hard drives, and the little things that had been scattered across the shelves. I wrapped my mic in one of my old hoodies, slid it into its box, and stacked it with the interface and the lights near the side door. Everything that mattered fit into 2 trips. The rest, the clothes, the books, the leftover posters, I shoved into a laundry basket and a couple of cardboard boxes I'd picked up from the corner store. I didn't pack carefully. I didn't fold anything. I just wanted to be gone. I didn't even go into the room, not my room anymore, to check if anything had been left behind. I didn't care. I had no interest in navigating around sleeping children or stepping over toy cars to retrieve a sock from under the bed. Whatever was in there could stay. Let them keep it. The second trip out to the car was slower. The weight of the gear, the night air, the reality of it. It all settled in at once. And for a minute, I just stood there at the trunk, watching the windows of the house I'd lived in for most of my life. Nothing moved. No silhouettes. No curtain shifts. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator inside and the creak of the house as it settled into the night. I walked back in for the last time. Set my keys on the kitchen counter. They made a soft click against the wood. No note. No message. No drama. Just 2 keys. One to the front, one to the back, left behind like everything else. No one was awake. No one came to check on the noise. No footsteps on the stairs. No door opening down the hall. Just silence. And for the first time in weeks, that silence didn't feel like a punishment. It didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. Honest. Final. I walked out the back door, closed it gently behind me, got into my car, and drove away. The apartment is small. The kind of small that makes you turn sideways to get past your own kitchen table. The kind where you can hear your upstairs neighbor sneeze and the pipes clank when someone flushes. But it's mine. The lease has my name on it. The key fits only my lock, and every scuff on the floor is something I noticed on move-in day and chose to ignore because none of it mattered. What mattered was that no one else had a say here. No one could walk in without knocking. No one could decide my space wasn't mine. The first thing I did was set up the studio. It took me half a day to rearrange the desk to fit against the narrowest wall, and I had to ditch one of the light stands because there just wasn't room for both. But the mic fit, the camera mount worked, and the phone panel stuck just fine. The sound wasn't perfect, the ceiling's a little low and the walls are too close, but I made it work. I recorded a client's intro that same night, uploaded it by morning, and got a message back saying, "Sounds better than ever." That one line stayed with me longer than it should have. The jobs kept coming after that. More than before, honestly. I stopped losing time trying to schedule my edits around cartoon marathons and stomping feet. I didn't have to pause a take because someone was reheating leftovers or yelling up the stairs. I could work when I wanted, sleep when I wanted, think without background noise. The silence was sharp at first, but it settled into something steady, something clean. And with it came focus. I upgraded a few plugins, raised my rates a little, started getting referred by a couple mid-tier clients who apparently liked how quick I was. The numbers in my account started creeping up for the first time in a while. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't scraping anymore either. There were no late-night arguments over who needed the space more. No stepping around toys on the floor. No lectures about being flexible or patient or understanding. Just my gear, my work, and the sound of my own voice in the headphones. I thought I might feel something after I left. Regret maybe. Some echo of sadness when I unpacked the last box and realized there were no familiar voices down the hall, no scent of laundry detergent lingering in the air from the old dryer. But I didn't. There was nothing to grieve, just the steady, growing sense that I should have done it sooner. Paying more for rent, for utilities, for food, it's not fun. I won't pretend it is. But paying more to not feel like a guest in your own life is worth every dollar. You can't put a price on respect, but if you could, it would be exactly the amount I pay now. And for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with that. Completely. It was exactly 4 weeks to the day since I moved out when the call came in. I remember because I had just wrapped up a rush job for a gaming channel in London and was halfway through reheating leftover pad thai when the screen lit up with her name. I stared at it for a second, thumb hovering over the answer button, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I already did. When I picked up, her voice was softer than I remembered. Not apologetic, not quite. Just careful. "Hey, Jared," she said, like she wasn't sure if I'd hang up right away. "I just wanted to let you know that Rhonda and the boys moved out. Things have settled down a bit. If you want, we can put your room back together. You can come home. Everything can be taken back." It hit me how easily she said it. Like none of it had happened. Like she could roll the clock back with a sentence and I'd just stepped back into that house like nothing had ever gone wrong. Like I hadn't packed my life in the dark. Like she hadn't laughed when I told her I'd leave. I didn't yell. I didn't tell her how much it had hurt, or how long I sat in that basement trying to convince myself I still mattered in that house. I didn't ask why she didn't believe me when I said I'd go. I just said it calmly. "I'm happy where they don't throw me out of my room." Then I hung up. No second message. No long follow-up. Just silence on the other end and the buzz of the phone as the call ended. So that's how it went. That was the last page in that chapter. And honestly, I'm not bitter. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. Thanks for sticking through this with me, Reddit. I know it was a long one, but now that it's all out there, I'd really like to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Would you have left earlier? Stayed longer? Let me know what you think, because now that it's behind me, I'm curious how other people see it.